So welcome to everybody. I'm going to introduce and pass across in a moment to Janine Mostyn of Huckleberry Sport. And we're going to talk today around the whole subject of recruitment. So whether you are recruiting other people or you're looking for a role yourself, and it could be that it's an executive role, it could be a board. We've talked before about board positions too. So I think lots of what Janine will share will be relevant for all of that really. I say keep introducing yourselves as we go through. We really want to make it quite interactive, so Janine's got some slides that she's going to share in the first half of the session, and then we'd love to take questions. So if you can, use the Q&A function to post any questions. Kate and I've got loads already that we'll be asking, but if you've got other questions that you'd like to ask, please do use the Q&A function. A quick introduction, actually, I should say. I'm assuming, because I know lots of people coming up here, but we have had lots of new members actually in the last couple of weeks or so. So my name's Sue Anstis, and I'm the co-founder of the Women's Sport Collective with Kate Hannon. I can let you introduce yourself, really, aren't Kate, who's also here on the call with me too. So jointly we run the Women's Sport Collective. But today it's not really about us and talking. We're going to pass across to Janine, and I say, please do post your questions and we'll take more questions at the end. So without further ado, that's very quick for me, just 3 minutes, usually I have more housekeeping than that. I'll pass across to Janine, and please do share your questions and we'll put those to you at the end. So thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Kate. So hi, everybody. I can't see who's on either, so it would be exciting to know afterwards who's joined us. So for those who don't know, I'm Janine Mostyn, the founder and MD of Huckleberry Sport, which is a recruitment agency purely in the sports industry. We work across multiple clients, be that rights holders, agencies, federations. If it's sport related, we'll happily work with you. And I think today, as Sue's touched on, in this current climate that we're in, where there is so many people sadly looking for work, so many people trying to fill positions within their own businesses, and maybe through budget restraints not able to use the traditional routes they had, and partnering with a recruiter, is to just highlight some of the things that are really important around how to make your CV stand out if you're applying directly, how to network, how to format your CV, and just like I say, happy to answer questions at the end if there's something I've not covered specifically. And I think just touching on the current climate now, what we're finding and our insights, obviously we're talking to a breadth of clients across the industry, is, you know, everyone is feeling more positive, certainly from this year to last. We're seeing an uptake in roles that we're being instructed to work on, so that's positive signs that people are putting their faith back in the industry and wanting to get, you know, some great talent on board. But there are still so many clients who are recruiting directly, and that's absolutely fine. It's the way things are at the moment, and so we want to just help you all position yourselves in the best way possible. I will just go through, there's not too many slides, so don't panic everybody, but I will just run through them, and if you've got questions, please jot them down, put them in the chat, and we'll get to them all at the end. So these are just the 3 traditional routes to market, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Using a recruitment agency, which some of you may have worked with or used yourself to hire, LinkedIn, which is everybody's friend right now, and your own networks, which I think some people forget to use. So we'll start on just talking about the importance of a good CV and how I can help you try to you know, come up with a good CV. I think right now, because so many clients are relying on LinkedIn and direct appointments rather than the traditional partnerships they may have had in the past, is when you're not being represented by a recruiter who can elevate your profile with the hiring manager and add some context to a CV. They may already have known you for years and have a personal relationship, so they can give a recommendation. Your CV is just going into a LinkedIn application or the client's website direct. It's sitting there amongst many others. We've all seen the numbers, and they're very high. You can be one of hundreds at the moment, and that can be off-putting. Please don't let that stop you applying. If you see a job that you're really interested in, regardless of how many applications you can see, you've got to be in it to win it. You know, if you don't apply, you definitely won't get the job. So have the confidence to apply. And if you don't get feedback, you know, that we can talk through that later on. But I think you have to put yourself forward and have the confidence to do that. And a good CV will make sure that, you know, you get on the short list. On the flip side of that comment, we have to appreciate for the person hiring, be that a recruiter, be that the hiring manager, somebody in HR, you know, it's an impossible task right now when you have so many applications to shortlist the best candidates. So this is where the CV, you know, is so important. Not all platforms allow you to put a cover letter, so you have to grab everybody's attention. And statistically, you need to grab people's attention within the first half page, sometimes less than that. So all the efforts you put in to put a good CV together, really your profile and your skills is where the screening will happen. And rightly or wrongly, that's the way it is when you've got to go through hundreds of CVs. That's what needs to pop out. So as I've just covered loosely on here is, you know, have a master CV that is your work history, but always make that bespoke for an application. And I think you have to understand that the people who are reading that CV might not be as experienced as you in that particular discipline. So if you are a social media expert, you know, the person who's sifting might not be. So if you fill your CV with jargon and acronyms, the person reading it isn't going to necessarily understand what you do. And if they don't know what you do, they might not shortlist you. So make your CV, you know, it's a tool to market yourself. It's not here to sort of tell your life story. You know, for people who've got a long career, nobody wants to know what your first job was when you left college. It's not relevant right now. So really keep it, you know, think of your best achievements, think of the best way to sell yourself, draw all of that out and make it really easy to read. If it's just, you know, if it to look at looks daunting to read, then it will be daunting to read, which means the person sifting probably won't read it. These are the tips that I've come up with that I think, you know, is a really good basis. This isn't carte blanche, the only way to produce a CV, but you should always just have your name and contact details really clear. Don't put your address. You should never put your date of birth on a CV anyway. People can work it out from education and from the amount of roles you've had, but it's actually, you know, shouldn't be on there. And addresses as well. Nobody needs to know your address till they're coming to write offer letters to you, and people can subconsciously make assumptions that they might not want to do that commute from where you live to where they are, but that doesn't mean you don't want to. So just take your address off, contact details only. Never write a CV as a third person. I'm yet with my 17 years of doing this to find anybody that has liked a CV written in that way, and certainly within the recruitment industry, it's a no-no. Be honest with your summary. Be honest about who you are and what you do. Reading so many CVs as I do every day, you can just tell sometimes when a profile, somebody's thought, oh, that doesn't make me sound very good, so I'm just going to get some really big words and go into Google and find ways of describing myself, that then when you read it back, you know that that's what that person's done. So just be honest about, you know, your skills, your personality. Hires these days are so much about culture fit. So yes, you have to fit the criteria and you have to have the, you know, the experience and evidence that, but I would say a lot of the hire, given the volume of people applying for jobs and the choice that clients have today, which is phenomenal, you are not going to be the only person that ticks every box of the essential experience required. You're not going to be the only candidate that can evidence what the client's looking for, but the culture fit is what makes you stand out above somebody else. So have your base CV and then tailor your profile to suit that role. If the job description has any desirable skills on it at all, and you've got those specialisms, make that really pop out on your CV in the profile. So when clients are screening, they're going to go through everybody's experience, they're going to shortlist the people who tick that box, and then they're going to have too many, and then they go, okay, I need to cut this list down, who's also got the desirable. It might be a language, it might be knowledge of a certain territory. So, you know, include all of those things and read the job description thoroughly. And put your core skills only, not all the generic skills that go with a certain job description. So, you know, if it needs to be a management role, put down the type of manager that you are, you know, not just that you've got management skills. If you've been a manager for 10 years, you should have management skills. So try to not take up space on your CV with the obvious, and put down the core skills. And industry, I think, is the last thing that's really relevant to put on there. Again, while clients have so much choice, it's very rare they're going to go out of industry at the moment, which is sad for those who are trying to cross industry, but it just is what it is right now. The clients can have all of their wishes, you know, met at the moment. So if they need somebody with sports experience, or even more relevant, a particular sport, if you've got that, make sure it's on there, make sure they can see that so that you make the shortlist. Career history, when people put their jobs down, they tend, sometimes I've seen CVs where it might just say December 19 to it might just say 2019 to 2020. That could mean that you only had a job for 2 months, because you could have started in December and left in the January, but it also could have been a 2-year position. So always put the month as well. If it was January 19 to December 20, then, you know, that's more relevant. Gaps on CVs, you know, clients will always question that. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have a gap, so don't make things up to fill those gaps. Be honest about why there was a gap, and it's absolutely fine to have one. You could have been traveling, you could have taken time out to be with your family, you could have just been looking for a job. Right now, it's very, you know, very common to have a gap on a CV, and nobody's going to question that it's taken longer than normal to find a role. But just be honest about that. Don't stretch your dates if they're not true. Bullet point your key achievements again, as I'd said, but don't write your job spec out. I think when somebody's got a job description and then they put on their CV what the job is, it just becomes too tedious to read. So just bullet point the key things that you did. Statistics, if you're going for a sales role or a commercial role, you know, put down your achievements, put down that you've you know, what your deals you've done. If it's an audience growth role, for example, and you grew it by X%, put that down. But also, if you're able to, unless it's confidential, put the numbers, because somebody could have grown an audience by 100%, but it could have grown from 1 to 2, so it's not that impressive. So numbers, you know, pounds of deals, percentages, it's all stuff that's going to jump out and make your CV stand out over somebody else's. And also the myth that you should only have a 1-page CV is not true. It's very hard to sum up a career in 1 page, so 2 to 3 pages is absolutely fine. And, you know, this is your one opportunity to say why the client should hire you. You can't sum that up in 1 page. So that's kind of as much as I've got on CVs. Please ask questions later if there's anything I've not covered, and I'll be happy to jump onto that. So LinkedIn is the next area that I wanted to cover. And as I said, at the moment, LinkedIn is the main tool that everybody's using. Very few jobs are on job boards these days. Everything seems to be on LinkedIn. So your first and second stage connections are really key to you right now. The more connections you have, the easier people can find you. So be really active on LinkedIn if you're looking for a job. Make sure people see, oh, I've seen that name cropping up a few times, or, you know, they commented on something or shared something that was really interesting. So it just, you want your name to be popping up, so when your CV lands in somebody's inbox, they go, oh, they've been really active, you know, I want to have a look at that. Check your contact information is correct on LinkedIn. I know this sounds so obvious, but I have had instances where I haven't been able to get hold of a candidate because their contact information wasn't correct. They hadn't responded to a message and missed out on opportunities because you couldn't get hold of them. Make sure your strapline is really, you know, compelling and attractive, and instead of, you know, just your name on LinkedIn, you know, use that field to say what you do or what you want. Looking for people to get in touch, you can, it's endless what you can put on there, but I've seen there's some really good ones, and I think they do really pop out. Don't be shy to ask for recommendations. Everywhere you've worked previously, if you haven't already, get in touch with those managers and say, I'm out of work at the moment, I'm looking for a job, can you please write a recommendation on my LinkedIn profile for me? You know, ask ex-colleagues, ask, you know, even clients who you've worked for. People really do look at those recommendations, and it's you know, it's an instant reference. So again, when trying to make the cut and you've got too many people on your short list, all of these are the next things. It's like, okay, everybody's the same, what's going to make this person stand out? I'll look at their profile. And also follow the companies of interest. So give some thought to where you would like to work in an ideal world, given the you know, those opportunities existed. Make sure you follow those companies, because when they look at your profile, they will check to see if you're following their company. So when you have your, you know, interview and say, oh, I really love your company, you know, I'm really passionate about wanting to work here, but you don't follow them or you don't comment, then it doesn't match. So make sure what you're saying is what you're doing. And just following on from LinkedIn with your own network, you know, don't be afraid to tell people you're looking for work. I know LinkedIn has the open to work symbol at the moment, but actually tell people, you know, there's one thing I have noticed over the last year is how helpful everybody is being at the moment. Those who are lucky enough to be in jobs are really supporting those who aren't. And also those who are trying to hire, you know, hiring somebody that's been recommended is always easier than starting from scratch and looking through applications. So if you're looking to hire somebody, reach out to your network. If you're looking for a job, reach out to your network. And I think don't just reach out to the people you know really well. Those can be really informal, personal, you know, messages. You might already have their number, you can ring them up for a chat, but message all of your connections, and that's absolutely fine to do, as long as your message doesn't give them any pressure to respond. So I've put the just stating, I did have a template message on there, apologies, I forgot to take that bit off the presentation, but I would say something along the lines of, hi, we're connected, I'm currently looking for work, this is what I do, please don't feel obliged to reach out to me unless you have anything of interest, but just wondered if you could help at this time, or you might have worked together previously and you could be like, hey, do you remember me, we worked together 6 years ago, I'm looking for work right now. Nobody will reply to that message to say, you know, how dare you contact me, but honestly ask for help, because so many people have sort of said to us that, oh God, I'm glad I reached out to XYZ because they did know somebody who was hiring. And be helpful to others. So if somebody messages you, really try and think if you can help, because if you do help, it really does come back around. And once you do secure an interview, that's one stage done, but then, you know, you really obviously want to make sure you secure the role. So when you've got an interview with any client, look up if you're connected to anyone there, if you're connected to anyone who is connected to anyone there. Use your network to try and get any inside information you can about that business. So those little snippets that you can mention in conversation in an interview will really make you stand out as a candidate that's done your homework and done your research, which goes on to interview preparation. So familiarise yourself with competency-based questions. Not all clients use them, and not everybody is familiar with them. So you can just Google what competency-based questions are. Just have a few answers to those style questions in your, you know, in your head, just in case they do come up, because some clients, like I say, do like very formal competency-based interviews. And so you need to be able to very quickly call upon a particular situation where you were given a task, what was the action you did and what was the outcome. And if you can't think of them quickly, or you keep using the same example, then because you weren't prepared, then, you know, that's not going to come across as well. So just have some of those in your file, in your head. Always have some good questions ready, and try and think of a couple of things that might not already have come up in the interview, because the worst thing to do at the end of an interview, when the client says, have you got any questions for us? And you say, no, everything's been covered. And that may well be the case, but then you've just got to have one little gem question you can ask. Sometimes a good one to always ask is ask the client why they work at that company. I think that's always a really nice question to ask, and it makes them think about why they do work there, but also they'll give you some insights to the culture, which will help you then decide whether that's also somewhere where you want to work. Research your company, research your interviewers' profiles. It's so obvious, but so few people put the time and effort into looking at, you know, not just the job spec, but the wider picture. Always look at your interviewer's LinkedIn profile, for a few reasons. You know, you want to know where they worked before, because the last thing you want to do in an interview is, I don't know, maybe, for example, give an example of someone who isn't doing something well in the industry, and that might be where they've just come from. Or, you know, so you need to know where they worked and look at their career path as well. That could also be another good question. You know, so how did they end up getting the position they did? So that's really important. Look on social media, look on Twitter, make sure if there's something that's just happened that's really relevant in the news to that company, be aware of that when you're going into your interview, because it could be really relevant to the direction that interview takes if you are that up to date with what's happening with that company. Reread the job description before you go into an interview, so it's really fresh in your mind. Keep your answers relevant to the job, not necessarily just random examples that you give that might not be specific to that role, because if you've got a breadth of experience, you're always going to have different examples you can give that the client might think, okay, that's great that you've done that, but that wasn't really relevant to this role. So just keep all that fresh. Check your tech works. Thanks, Sue and Kate. We jumped online before this to make sure I could share my screen. Little things like that, just check all of that works. And dress for your interview. You know, these days, you know, sadly, everything isn't face to face, and you know, whatever you've got on your bottom half is up to you. But, you know, dress presentably as you would if you were meeting the client. It shows you're taking this as a serious interview, even if it is over Zoom, that you're not there in your casuals. So it puts you in the right frame of mind as well, I think, to take the interview seriously. And follow up, always follow up. I think, again, where you may not be working with a recruiter at the moment and going for things directly, this is all the stuff your recruiter would be doing for you. But there's nothing wrong with messaging a client within a few days if you haven't heard from them, because certainly as a recruiter, if I'm representing half a dozen people for the same role, the ones that follow up, it's never an annoyance. People always think, oh, I don't want to be a pain, I don't want to follow up. They're the ones that I think, I know you really want this role because you're following up, and hopefully you should be hearing feedback anyway, but never accept no feedback as acceptable. You know, a recruiter will always get that feedback for you and give it to you, but as I said, where you may not have that luxury at the moment, insist that the client gives you feedback. If you've gone to the trouble of giving up your time to do all of this research I've talked about and given up your hour and a half to have an interview, they should give you feedback. And if they don't, I would keep messaging till you get it. And that just shows what you're, you know, that you've got that tenacity and shows what you're like as a person. And those are the people that, you know, clients should be hiring really anyway. So don't be afraid to do that. That's it. I think we just about got that in the half hour. So hopefully I'm looking forward to your Q&A.
I think I'm back, but I can't see myself actually now. Sorry, can you see me on screen or not?
You are back,
Right.
Sue.
I am back.
Shall I stop sharing? So
Oh,
I
lovely. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
Lovely. Thank
I
you.
hope I didn't rattle through that too quickly.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. I can't see myself, but that's fine. I don't need to see myself as long as I can. You can hear my voice. That's okay, isn't it? That was fantastic. I've got so many questions, and we've got lots of questions in the Q&A. So I may start by asking those before I chime in with mine. Actually, I'm going to start with one of mine before I go to theirs, which was around CV design. And I look at, I guess I've been in a position of receiving CVs over the years, and they haven't really evolved much in terms of the 30 years I've been in business. But obviously we see more templates. I'm now helping my daughter design their CVs, and more Canva and the like create design base. So is there a little bit of design good? How do you get yourself to stand out from the crowd?
I think firstly it depends on what your experience is. So if you are applying for any jobs in creative, graphic design, social media, anything that in means you have to have a creative edge to do your job, absolutely make your CV creative. If I was recruiting for a creative role and received just a text format CV, I would think this is your opportunity to showcase your skills. If I was hiring somebody who needed to, I don't know, a sales role, for example, it's not absolutely necessary that their CV is full of a lot of graphics. However, to stand out, I would have a really happy mix of the two. I would definitely have a creative CV if your discipline is creative. If it's anything other than that, it's really nice to have, even if it's as much as the company's logos instead of the company name, or personally, I'm not a fan of photos on CVs, but some people do have them, and it really is personal taste. A lot of European candidates tend to have photos on CVs as well, and that's a very traditional template style. But if you've got a really lovely photo and you look really engaging and love, but the first thing a client's going to do is look up your LinkedIn profile, and your photos on there anyway. So for me, I feel it's a waste of space on the CV. But I really like the CVs that have, things like charts where it will show their level of competency in a certain, if it's a language skill or, they're really nice to look at. And like I say, have that template, one generic CV, and tailor it for the role. But yeah, absolutely, nobody wants to just read that's just like a really boring kind of essay, because it's not, it's not your life story. It's supposed to be really punchy, and less is more. Get the key stuff on there, and don't talk too much on, in the text.
Excellent. We've got lots of questions coming through now, so I might try and merge a few together. Kate, you can do that too. So the one and we've got people voting questions up, which is fantastic to see too. So I'll ask the ones that are at the top at the moment. What are your thoughts on organisations not listing a salary or putting competitive? What's the best way to address this when trying to decide whether you should apply or not?
I always think competitive always makes me chuckle, because competitive is different to different people. So it does always make, I've never used that. Look, I always think transparency is the best. So if you're advertising a role and you put the salary, you straight away don't have to waste time looking through all the people who were way over budget and said, oh, I thought from the job title it was going to be more, and people who think, oh, that's a stretch too far and I'm not at that. It sets the tone of the level of experience. Job titles are so undescriptive these days. So a head of in one organisation could be really senior and not in another. So I think it should be transparent. Now, recruiters don't tend to advertise salaries, and that's normally because when a recruiter is looking for representing a client, the client has either said they can't, and if they've given us an instruction that we can't, then we can't. But also you want to widen your net a bit when you're trying to attract candidates. So if a client's paying 80k for a role, I still want to talk to the 60k candidates, because I'll think you could be amazing and you could grow into the role. But I also want to talk to the 100k candidate who might be flexible. So it's a tough one. I would say I wish the clients would be transparent and say salaries always, but then I do think that would stop people applying that might be frightened by a salary and think that's not right. So it is a tough one. I'd love to see it. I think it should be there.
And this isn't one of the questions, but when people ask what your current salary is, should you always be completely honest with that? Is that an obligation? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an obligation, but I just think, why would you not? And I think, you know, certainly when you're working with a recruiter, people always think recruiters are asking your salary, because the first thing we're going to do is just put you in at, you know, a couple of thousand more to get the deal. You know, firstly, recruiters are paid a percentage of the person's basic salary fee when appointed. So the more we get the candidate, the more we get. So we will always get you as much as we can. But also, it helps you just know where someone's motivations are. If a candidate says I'm on 60k, but really that's not my driving factor, I love this role and I want to work in this location. If somebody says I'm on 60 and I'm not moving unless I get 80, if that's your motivation and you think a client has to pay £20,000 more to get you, it's not the motivation. Yeah. So you should always be transparent. And, you know, why would you not be? I think, you know, yeah, always.
And I've got another question here. Do you have an example of a great LinkedIn strapline?
I just saw that question and I was thinking, oh God, here's me going, be prepared and be put on the spot.
Well, actually, I'll just jump in for you there, actually, and just say, I did put in the post then, we have done a session on mastering LinkedIn, and there is a webinar on the website. Yeah. It does talk a lot about tailoring your strapline. So yeah. I
will think of some and I'll comment them on your
yeah. On your I guess my answer is going to be, it depends on who you are and what you're trying to.
It does depend on, yeah, it does depend on, I just think having things like, you know, if you're say you're a great, amazing salesperson, then, you know, you don't want to just say I'm an amazing salesperson. You want to be, you know, I can't think of anything on the spot, but I'll think of some and I'll chat it in a minute.
Kate, do you want to ask some questions?
There's a few questions, Janine, about the difference of the content that you put in a cover letter, into your CV and in your LinkedIn, and should they be the same or should they be different? And how do you tailor the cover letter to hit the spot?
I think if you are able to send a cover letter with a role, then that's great, because you can keep your CV very, you know, just structured, and then you can write all the really lovely stuff about why this particular role in your cover letter. If the portal that you're applying on, or whatever the system is, and you're not going through a recruiter, doesn't allow you to upload 2 documents, I always say make it part of the document. So write your cover letter, but not as a separate. So it's the first page of your CV is the cover letter, and it just goes into your CV. That way you've just managed to get your cover letter in front of the client without them having to accept a cover letter. If that then makes the document too big, or for whatever reason there isn't room to do that, use your profile summary as your cover letter. So make sure that profile, the client wants to think that you're applying for their job and that's the only job you want in the world. If you're just sat out on your lunch break just doing quick apply to every single job on LinkedIn with no reference to the company name, to I'm excited by this opportunity, because they know you're just wanting a job and you're applying for anything and everything, and then why would they want to hire you if you don't really want that job? So always bespoke it.
There's a couple of comments on feedback. So one saying they asked for feedback and not had it, and one saying you had feedback, said you're great, but actually we want practical feedback. So from your point of view, I guess both with a recruiter and also from a who's interviewed you, how hard do you push that?
It's probably the biggest topic I talk about, and I honestly think it's unacceptable for a client not to give feedback. You can't make a client give feedback, but when as a recruiter, I will push my client until they do. I will not accept no feedback, and I have had, you know, fairly heated conversations sometimes with clients where I've said, you've wanted this candidate to give up, you know, 4 different interview stages, presentations, they've done all this and you're not giving feedback. It's not okay. So our job is to educate the clients that they have to give feedback. It's just not okay to not. But when you haven't got somebody fighting that corner for you, who's probably got a better relationship directly with the client, so I can have that conversation. I appreciate as a candidate, you're not going to want to just, hey, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, you know, this isn't okay. But it really isn't okay. And you just have to, I would literally be like a dog with a bone. I would just not give up until I got it. And if it's a HR person that you're dealing with and they won't give you the feedback, I would message whoever you've had the interview with, send them a LinkedIn connection request. And in the thing, it was great to meet you. I haven't had feedback yet. Can I please have some? Because it will help me moving forward. Make them accountable.
Oh, I like that approach. That's really good.
Make them accountable.
Kate, do you want to ask some questions that you've seen there?
Another question is about how much contact can you make with somebody that you've how much direct contact can you have with somebody? So if you've seen a job advert and it's got a name in it, is it okay to go to them directly?
I think if they put their name in it, they're asking to be contacted directly. So if a client, normally when a client is advertising a role directly, they will put this role reports to the CMO. They won't give the name. If they haven't given the name, then to find the CMO and message them and go, hey, that's probably not okay. You would just apply and wait, wait to hear back. But if it says, if the person looking for the job has done the post and said, get in touch, then absolutely DM them, connect. If you're connected with them, message them directly, but always put your formal application in and then message to follow up. I think because whenever people contact, I get a lot of people who will contact and say, oh, I've seen you've advertised for a role, I'd love to chat. With the best will in the world, I can't just chat to everybody who's interested in a role unless I've seen their CV and I know that they're good enough to talk to about the role. So if everybody that was just interested approached, you're just never going to get your job done. So if you haven't sent your CV in first, you're likely to just get can you reply directly? Then I'll speak to you. And a lot of candidates say, oh, but I want to speak to you before I apply because I want to know more about it. And it's like, we can't speak to everybody. So apply and then follow up. Yeah, absolutely. It's fine. There's
a couple of questions that Kate, these could come from Kate and I. These aren't Kate and I's questions, but we've both got daughters at university. So a few students now coming out of university, so really tough time clearly. And a number of them asking, how do we kickstart? Any recommendations, sort of top tips for getting started when you haven't really got much on your CV to start with?
Yeah. So when you haven't got that career to talk about, still build a CV and put anything you've done as not necessarily part-time jobs that in hospitality industry or something, if whatever your part-time job, but if say you are looking to be a video producer, you might have been doing loads of freelance, and so any work you've done that's paid, unpaid, put it on there. Put any personal references you might have, that's a good thing to put on your CV if you haven't got any work experience. I've probably yet to find a grad that I've spoken to who hasn't got some work experience, because these days most graduates are so much more forward thinking than we ever were, that they all every holiday they're doing volunteering, they're doing unpaid work, they're doing internships. That all of that is experience, so it all needs to go on there. But also use this as your tool. Instead of saying what you've done, talk about what you want to do and talk about the personal skills that you have that can bring to that client. So your culture fit, your passions, your hobbies, it's all stuff that builds a profile. And make sure you have a LinkedIn profile, whether you've got work experience or not. All graduates need to be on LinkedIn because that's where everyone's looking at the moment.
Kate, did you want to jump in with the one?
The question is, somebody's asked, do you need to put all of your courses and all your certificates on a CV? And if you're newly, do you need to be putting your GCSEs if you're just a new grad, or how much detail is it?
I think I would say, your degrees and anything that is industry specific or discipline specific. So if you've done a project management course, you've done Prince 2 or whatever you've done, all of those need to be on there. If you're a graduate, And look, not everybody goes to university. That's still, you know, you might want to be trying to get an apprenticeship. I would put whatever your latest qualifications are. So if you've got a degree, I wouldn't put your GCSEs on, because it's the kind of obvious, if you've only got, you know, as far as say A levels, it's obvious you need the GCSEs to do the A level. So I would put what the latest education is, but it's absolutely fine not to have gone to university and not to have done A levels, because especially in the gaming industry, so many people now in esports and gaming, which is probably the only industry that has thrived over the last 12 months, those candidates are gaming anyway. They're passionate about gaming. They're playing all of these games online. They've left school and they just want to work in gaming. And so that's fine. Talk about your passions, talk about what you know about that industry, and look at the companies that are hiring and taking apprenticeships on. So like Sports Interactive, who make the Football Manager game, we work exclusively with them. So I'm using them as an example because I know what they do from an apprenticeship, but they take apprenticeships on every year, and they are straight out of school and haven't been to university. So absolutely, always put just what the latest is you've got. You don't need to put it all.
Lovely, thank you.
There's a question around nerves, so calming pre-interview nerves, and I'm going to link that into another question that was about the STAR interview response method, because that made me nervous just looking at that.
Yeah.
But is there any website you'd recommend to find out more about STAR, and any tips you might have for calming pre-interview nerves? I thought one might help the other. Honestly,
the STAR is very few people use that method, so don't. Most interviews are more conversational. But depending how formal and structured the company is, they probably will have later in the stages a HR formal competency-based question. But it's only for the jobs where, you know, it's really relevant to the role. So if it's but honestly, if you literally just Google competency-based questions, it will come up with what types of questions they are, what types of responses you can give. There's loads if you just literally Google it. As far as nerves, do a practice session with a friend or a parent, or, you know, a colleague who you can just say, look, I hate doing video interviews. I get really nervous. Can you just spare 15 minutes one evening? Can we just do a Zoom, and can you just ask me some questions and just get me out of the nerves of, because it might be your first one. And also over Zoom it's harder because you can't, you just don't get that personal feel that you do when you're in a room with somebody. So do role play with a friend. It sounds silly, but it really does help. And also tell the interviewer, if you're really, really nervous, tell them at the beginning. Anyone that says, I'm really nervous, I haven't done many of these, the interviewer's instantly gonna relax. They'll relax you into it, but also they'll probably make some allowances for, you know, you might not have answered a question well, but we understand you were nervous. So please say you're nervous. Don't come out of it thinking, oh, I messed that up, and then lose the confidence to apply for other jobs. We always used to have Kate Hannon promote, bringing people in, make a cup of tea, making them feel relaxed. And yeah, you want to get the best out of them. You're very good at that, Kate. In terms of another question of anyone wanting to change their industry, obviously it's not a necessarily good time, but if not now, then when? But any advice you'd offer where you haven't got that skill set to transfer across, or that industry experience? It is really difficult, especially in sport, because so many of the jobs, it really is relevant to the role that you have that industry knowledge. So there's very few jobs, you know, if you're working in HR, for example, if you want a job in HR, you know, HR law and compliance is HR compliance. So you can do, there are jobs that are industry transferable easily. But if you're wanting to do big, you know, if you're going for a sponsorship or partnerships role in sport and you haven't got experience of putting a sports brand partnership together, a client isn't going to take a chance on, because you've done it in, you know, fashion or something before, that when they've got the choice of the candidate. So we get inundated with requests of people saying, you know, I've had a career in banking all my life and I really love football, so now I want to work in football. And with the best will in the world, why would the client hire you when there's loads of people who've got the football experience that are waiting for those opportunities? So be realistic and put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes. Would you hire you if you think you've got transferable skills? You've got to market that in your CV. You've got to let them know what those transferable skills are, and have some relevance of, you know, this might be my day job, but on a personal note, I get really involved in this. You know, you've got to give them something that makes them think, okay, you don't do it for a job. And everybody has to get their first job, of course, in an industry. So it's really hard, but you can't expect a client to just hire you cold from one industry to the other because you've just decided to change. It is just that hard, I'm afraid.
From a recruiter's point of view, Janine, how should you structure a job advert so that you're hitting the right target audience? So what information do you need to include? What should it look like? Yeah. Where should you publish it?
So at the moment, LinkedIn really is the best place to post your advert. I think there are very few job boards out there that offer, you know, there are some sport specific job boards and people will put their jobs on there and LinkedIn, but the people that are going to get in the post from the job board are going to be on LinkedIn anyway. If they're free, fine, put it out in as many places as you can. But if you're going to pay to advertise on job boards when all those same people are going to be looking on LinkedIn, but there are specific job boards that are good for certain territories. So you might be trying to, you know, we really want to be doing something in Asia, and there might be a really good job board to use that reaches a different audience. Or you might want to advertise in universities if you're looking for apprenticeships, or you might want to, you know, there might be, you know, even just groups like yours, you know, if you're looking for, you know, to attract people that might not just be sat on LinkedIn. I think the problem is at the moment you've got the job seekers who are out of work, who are actively on LinkedIn looking for a job every day, but you've also got people who are unhappy in their jobs who want a new job but are so busy doing their job they can't just sit looking at LinkedIn all day. So you want to be reaching them. So that's why I said people, if you're following companies that you would like to work at, you will get the notification if they've posted a job anyway. So that's a good way of knowing you're going to reach people who are following your company. But to structure the advert, don't make it too long and make it sound fun. I think sometimes adverts just are job descriptions, and you know, if somebody responds to an advert, you're then going to send them the job description. If the job description's this long, you don't want the advert to be that long. So I try to make mine, you know, put the personality in, put the fun in, put the, you know, if you want to work hard but have fun, you know, we've got a really great team. We like to go for a drink on a Friday. I mean, back in the day when we all used to be able to do that, or we all play, you know, we all do quizzes. We love quizzes every week. Something that just makes it sound personal. But the key thing is the essential skills. So when you're hiring and you've written a job spec that covers every single thing because you have to, but you really deep down know as long as they've got these 3 things, they're on the short list, then put those 3 things in the advert and leave the rest out. Because as long as they've got them, that's what you're shortlisting them on. I think the longer you make the advert, the harder you make your shortlisting job, because everyone's going to apply because they'll have 2 of those things. But if they weren't the important things, don't put them on there, then those people won't apply.
Excellent.
So yeah,
we've got 20 questions in 10 minutes, but I want to get through all the questions. We'll get through as many as we can.
Okay.
A few people asking about expected salary. So what do you put as your expected salary, and you're on your current salary, but what they ask, that's a difficult one, because you feel it's like bidding for properties. You don't know what everyone else has put. So I would just stick with what you know your walk away point is. So sometimes if you think, right, I'm on 70, I want 80, but if I put 80, that might rule me out of the job, so I'll put 75. But if you're not going to accept 75, don't put it. Like, put your walk away number, but put a range if you can, or, you know, upwards of.
if you go in too high, then you might rule yourself out. I don't know many people that do that in posts. It's quite unusual to ask people that don't know anything about the role yet to put an expected salary, because you, like you say, you could rule yourself out of the position before you know anything about it. It's not always a given that you should get an uplift in salary because you're moving jobs as well. I think some people think every time you move jobs you should get another 10k, and that's not the case. If you're a 40k candidate now, why on Monday should another client pay another 10,000 for you? If that's where you're at, that's where you're at. You might want to be making a sideways step because you want to get into a different organisation. So you don't always expect an uplift. Put what you're on and a little bit more, maybe.
Lovely, thank you. There's a nice question here about internal interviews and promoting yourself for internal jobs.
Yeah, that's a great question. Really good question, because I think some people are always frightened internally to make out they're not happy in their current role, because then you think, you know, it really has to be dependent on what the relationship is with your line manager. But if an internal role has been posted and you're interested in it, absolutely put your hat in the ring. And any company who then treats you differently because you've done that it's not the right company to be working at. They should be encouraging progression all the time. And if they can encourage you to apply for roles internally and progress, it's an easy win for the client, because they get somebody internally that then creates a hole where you've left for somebody else. So you should always apply, but hopefully you've got a good enough relationship with your line to speak to them about it.
Someone asked, in terms of LinkedIn and looking for recommendations, which you recommend, but how far back should you go from colleagues? If you've been in a role for 3.5 years, would it be odd to go back and get recommendations?
No, honestly, it's and it's sometimes a really nice way of reconnecting, and that person might then go, oh God, it's lovely to hear from you. What are you up to these days? Oh, I didn't realise you did that. I'm looking for one of them, and you've got yourself a job. So yeah, go back as far as you want. I'm just gonna jump in. I passed you, Kate, in a second. I was just jump in with, but not that I'm an expert in this at all, but I had outplacement when I was at Quaker 30 years ago, and one of the pieces of advice they gave me was not going to people to say, have you got a job, but can you introduce me, someone in your network? I just want to have that whole, and I've used that since, and I've advised people of that since. Always
knocking on my door to say, is there anyone in your network who you think might be looking, rather than is the onus on I'm asking you if you've got a job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like I said, that was that, you know, reach out to your network, send them a message to say, you know, we're connected, we used to work together, I'm looking for work currently, this is what I do, and literally 2 or 3 skills, you know, this is what I do. If you know anyone who is looking, I'd really appreciate an introduction. Why would somebody not help when you're not asking them to reply to you if they haven't, because they're busy? Always.
There's a nice question here, is how do you find a recruiter that's the best fit?
Ta-da! I think you're a good recruiter should be a recruitment partner for life. Like I've worked with people that I've placed in 3, 4, 5 jobs. Like, you become friends and they get to know you. You just click with somebody. Transparency, honesty has to be the forefront of both candidate and recruiter relationships. So if you feel it's the first time of speaking to that recruiter and you really like them and you felt they were very honest and transparent and you were back, that relationship will just continue. If you've been stung by a recruiter, which many have, you know, this industry has not got a great reputation, and there are recruiters out there, and it's not always the recruiter personally's fault. It might be where they work. They're told, you know, don't spend more than 5 minutes on the phone, you've got to make 100 calls, don't speak to anyone if you can't make a fee from them. You know, those cultures sadly still exist. So if that recruiter you didn't have a great experience with, it's probably the company. So maybe just look for another agency, and that recruiter might move jobs somewhere later on and you might reconnect. So it's got to be a trusted relationship. And they've got to fight your corner. You know, they're selling you, so you want the best.
I love that idea of a lifetime relationship.
Yeah.
I'm going to combine a couple here, which is there a minimum number of or maximum number of skills on your CV? And should you actually put a LinkedIn question? That'd be my first question then is in terms of what the content that you have.
I'd say half a dozen bullets max. Yeah.
That's good. That's quick. That's lovely. And then also, should your LinkedIn photo always be a headshot? I thought I could answer that myself, but I'll let you.
No, but it should be a professional shot. You know, yeah. I think keep them quite fun, and in, you know, if you're at a sports stadium and it's, you know, that's fine. But if you're, you know, out on the lash with a few mates, probably not.
Lovely. Kate, did you have another one?
From a recruitment point of view, I mean, there are so many applicants for all of the job vacancies at the moment. What's the easiest and quickest way to sift CVs?
So putting in on LinkedIn now has a pre-qualification questions, which is a godsend because it really does help. So when I'm advertising any role, I will put, again, going back to that, what are the 3 things that I know the client is going to reject any CV if they haven't got X, Y, Z. Put that qualification question in, and then when you're going through your hundreds of applications, you can set a kind of auto, it doesn't reject, but it auto archives anyone that doesn't. So it brings to the forefront everyone who's got the 3 out of 3 or 6 out of 6. How about you can put as many questions as you want. At least you just look at them first. And then I do still always go to the archive, because sometimes somebody might just not have one, but I'll look at the rest of their profile and go, actually, they're great, and I'll still speak to them. But you want to get to the best first, because if you haven't got a role exclusively and another recruiter is working on the role, or, you know, you want to be sort of sifting through. So, but answer honestly, because people just go, I know if I don't answer yes to all of these, I'm not going to get looked at. And then you look at the CV and you're like, so just be honest. I think you're only fooling yourself. If it will come through, you know, if you exaggerate your skills, exaggerate your experience, it'll come out in interview, and then you're wasting your own time as well as the clients. So just be honest.
Lovely. I'm conscious we've got a couple more minutes. I'll just do a couple more, and I'm sorry if we didn't get to them. We've done as many as we can. This is very interesting. Recently had a blind interview where I asked questions via computer, felt very impersonal and not very inclusive, and it's rather wanting to apply to that company again. Can companies do that in the recruitment process? And I guess my bit then is, are we seeing more of that? Do you think?
I'm wondering if this is a candidate that's been through a role with me recently. I've just, in 17 years I've been doing this, I've got a client currently who does that, and I've never seen it before. And I actually have been telling the candidates ahead, so it doesn't just suddenly throw them, by the way, this is what's going to happen. Now, I did ask the question why, and I was, so it's not the hiring manager, it's the HR stage of the interview. So the hiring managers always, if you've got a hiring manager who doesn't put the video on, by the way, I wouldn't even want to do the interview. I would just say, but ask, don't be quiet and go, this is weird. I would say, excuse me, your video's not on. Did you realise? And if they say, oh, I don't want to put it on, I would just say, I don't feel comfortable with that, because if I'm going to be working for you, I want to see you. So absolutely address that. But this one stage that I have with a client now is it's just very generic HR screening questions, and it's because they don't want to be distracted by having some unconscious bias of, oh, I like the look of them and I didn't like the look of them. It's about the answers to the questions. So actually, I really liked her reasoning for doing that. But never do a hiring manager face-to-face interview without the video on. I just think that's strange.
Really interesting. It's almost like those blind CVs that don't have the name taken off and background too, in terms of
but look, you can figure out that anyway.
Connection there.
Yeah, if somebody sends, you know, I don't understand why some recruiters will take a candidate's name off, take all the contact details off, put their own details so that the client can't contact the candidate and they have to go through the recruiter. If you've got a good enough relationship with your client as a recruiter, you trust them anyway. And all you've got to do is go onto LinkedIn and look at, you know, work out who was the marketing manager at, you know, the FA, and then you find the candidate anyway. So I just think that's silly doing that. Just if everybody was more transparent and honest with recruitment processes, that's my only bit of my wish for the industry is if everybody just stopped trying to you know, do sneaky things and just was transparent, it would just be so much nicer for everybody.
Brilliant. I'm going to wrap it there, and I'm conscious of more questions, but we always try and make sure we finish on time. Janine, thank you so much. I think we can see we've never had so many questions coming through.
I know, I've really enjoyed it, and I've tried to answer as much as possible. But look, anyone who wants to connect with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Please don't all send me your CVs for review. But yeah, look, I'm more than happy to continue chatting to anyone. If you want to connect with me and ask anything, I'll help where I can.
Excellent, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody, and we hope to see you again. We've got another networking meeting on May the 11th, and more on the website in terms of what's coming up. So hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much, Janine.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Sue.